Over 3,000 stones rise from the fields of Carnac. They stand silent, waiting like the trees of Fangorn Forest, patient and alive beneath their stillness. In this episode of Quest and Chorus, we walk among ancient alignments, uncover old legends, and listen to what endures. Featuring the music of the Irish Lassies, Dublin Gulch, and Brobdingnagian Bards, this is Quest and Chorus, number 310.
Whisky down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on working over hill and dale. Tom Durant, he claimed my soul for a steam-run beast and a bucket of coal. You can't go, don't be deceived. Get on this rail line, you don't leave. They say these railroads run with gold. I've never seen, so I never know. Take the hammer, leave the gun, and work to the Salt Lake Shore. Hammer up, whiskey down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on working over hill and dale. Took my pay, did my time, served my sentence on the Continental line. Left my wife and left my son. Life seems over and it just begun. They say these railroads run with gold. I've never seen, so I'll never know. Take the hammer, leave the gun, and work till the Salt Lake Shore. Hammer up, whiskey down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on working over hill and beats on a boiler's roar. Railroad binds east to west with the blood-stained dollars, New York invest. They say these railroads run with gold. I've never seen, so I'll never know. Take the hammer, leave the gun, and work to the Salt Lake Shore. Hammer up, whiskey down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on working over hill and Casement, the Geneva man, walks down the line with gun in hand. $1 a day, some die, some run. Says he can't leave when the work's not done. They say these railroads run with gold. I've never seen, so I'll never know. Take the hammer, leave the gun, and work till the Salt Lake Shore. Hammer up, whiskey down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on working over hill and dale. Hammer up, whiskey down, drive that spike straight to the ground. Another tie, another rail, keep on
Welcome to Quest and Chorus, where ancient stones still speak and songs remember what trees never forgot. I'm your bard, Marc Gunn, also host of the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast, and typically host of this show as folk songs and stories, but today we call it Quest and Chorus. Quest and Chorus is a 6-part podcast series. I fuse Celtic and folk music, science fiction and fantasy, and travel into a podcast with a quest. In each episode, you will get a clue to unlock a secret reward. And at the end of the season, you will combine all of these clues to unlock an even bigger award. Now, today we walk not into a forest, but into a field that feels like one. The alignments of Carnac stretch across the land like rows of rooted giants. They are silent, but not still, and if you listen, they speak in echoes. Today we talk of nature, of memory, and also of what I learned about food waste. Over the past few years, I have been attempting to learn a little bit more about how to be more sustainable, environmentally friendly, things that I did not think about when I was younger, and now I'm lamenting that and trying to learn and get better at everything how I handle stuff in the world so that my children will have a better place to live. A lot of the change has come through thoughts with food. Food waste is one of the most overlooked causes of climate change. When food ends up in landfills, it doesn't just rot, it releases methane, a greenhouse gas, over 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Producing that wasted food also burns through massive resources, water for crops, fuel for transport, and energy for storage. Globally, about 1/3 of all food produced is never eaten, yet it accounts for roughly 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Reducing food waste means cutting pollution, saving money, and easing the pressure on farmland and oceans. It's one of the simplest, most personal ways we can all fight climate change, starting right in our kitchens. So when I was trying to figure out how to make the most of my food, it all actually began a long time ago when we were buying bananas for the kids. Those bananas would turn brown and become nasty. I started wondering what I could do with those, and what I decided to do was to start freezing the bananas when they started to go bad. And then the same thing was happening with our strawberries, which my kids, when they were younger, they ate strawberries a lot. But sometimes they got into a habit of eating them and then they left them. Well, I took those and I put them in the freezer. Then one day I started thinking, you can just make smoothies from bananas and strawberries, right? And I started playing with recipes, and I came up with my own smoothie recipe. And that's where my food journey actually began, was just by reusing fruit that was starting to go bad. Later, I learned that you can pretty much make vegan ice cream about the same way. If you freeze your bananas and then blend them up later and then mix in whatever fruit you want, maybe add a little bit of honey or agave. Next thing you know, you have an absolutely delicious ice cream or, again, smoothie. So something to consider. Now, the next step in my journey was composting, and I started composting about 2 or 3 years ago. We have a hole in the ground that I just dump fruits and vegetables that we don't eat. I don't compost any meats or eggs because the local animals end up digging those up. This turned into a wonderful thing because we love butternut squash in our family. Lo and behold, I'd throw the guts of a used butternut squash into the compost pile, and next thing I know, there was more butternut squash growing in our backyard. How cool is that? I think that was actually when I started learning that we could actually plant food. I know, that's kind of crazy. I know that sounds really kind of crazy because, we can plant food. But gardening has never been my strong suit, never been something I've thought about. I know my grandparents, they had a garden, a giant field garden where we break up green beans, I remember, and they usually bring some watermelon out from the fields. So ate a lot of that when I was in summers when I was growing up. But I never thought about actually trying to grow anything until about 3 or 4 years ago is when I first started actually planting stuff. I planted some green beans. It was okay. But the big one that we started planting for our family was okra. My kids absolutely love okra. So we started planting that in our backyard. And lo and behold, this year was actually the best because I planted a lot of okra. The green beans never were the best. Wasn't as keen on those. But it was actually this year that I realized that not only can I plant okra, but I can plant whatever I want, which means maybe next year we might have blackberries or blueberries. We shall see, and it might take a while. I don't know how this stuff works because I'm unsure about it. But the other thing we grew this year was cucumbers. And that was really cool because that got me thinking, what can you do with cucumbers? Because cucumbers go bad pretty quickly. And we had some that actually just exploded over the summer. So they were like enormous, a foot and a half long, and a fist thick, it was huge. And that's when I said, well, let's try pickling. And so I started pickling cucumbers and pickling okra. And I've tried pickling other items as well, carrots and whatever else is not being used in the fridge. And it's been an exciting, fun little journey right there. But that got me thinking, what is the difference between pickling and fermenting? Because I didn't really know. Apparently, pickling is when you boil water and vinegar with some seasoning, and then you basically pour it into a jar with whatever you're pickling, and it sort of cooks it right there. And depending on how much vinegar you use in the pickling process, that determines whether you need to refrigerate or not. I learned a little bit about the cottage food industry here in Georgia, because apparently you have to have like 50% vinegar in order to create a cottage food that does not require any health and safety inspections. Now, fermenting, of course, is basically doing about the same thing, except you don't use boiling water and vinegar. You remove the boiling aspect, and again, you let it ferment over time, making sure everything is submerged. Still don't know much about it. There's a lot of salt that needs to be in there. You have to get the pH just right. That's a new one for me. Maybe next year I will learn a little bit more about that. Number 5 on my list, though, is soups. And this just struck me just a couple days ago. We all have food that goes bad over time. And one of my goals has been to try to make sure I'm using it. I'm not putting stuff in the trash as much as possible. And so just a couple days ago, I made my first soup where I didn't use a box of broth or stock, of chicken stock or vegetable stock. In fact, all I did was I just poured a whole bunch of getting old vegetables into a crock pot, poured water on top of them, seasoned it, and let it cook. And it actually came out pretty good. It was sort of a hodgepodge of items. Things like I cut up some broccoli stems. Those and cauliflower stems are kind of frequently not eaten or wasted. Yet they're still good. There's nothing wrong with them. So I cut them up and I put them into my soup. And it turned out awesome. The last thing I want to tell you about is granola. My wife eats granola, and I started doing that about a year ago. And we've been buying it from the store in a nice little plastic bag. And that's where it all began, because I was like, why do we need a plastic bag? And then it struck me, you know what? I have all this oatmeal. I can make granola. So I found a recipe online and I started making my own granola, and it's really easy. It takes, 20, 30 minutes. It lasts me 1 to 2 weeks, and it's absolutely delicious, and it doesn't use any plastic. So those are a few things that I've learned about how to make the most of my food in my refrigerator. And it's been a lot of fun. Now, of course, you don't have to do it all in one day. I certainly didn't. It took me several years. And it doesn't have to be perfect either. You just have to be open to learning how to do this. It's a lot of fun, actually. And because, of course, it's a lot of fun, it's also not really much work. It's just another fun thing to do in the kitchen. A way to personalize my own, like granola or whatever, or my own pickled okra, which was really good. If you are interested in learning more about being more sustainable and environmentally friendly, check out sustainablejungle.com and also 15C. That's the word 1, the number 5, and the letter C. There are links in the show notes. They both have a lot of real practical and non-judgmental tips on how to be more eco-friendly with your food and your life. If you're new to the show, please follow us. You can do that at pubsong.com. Upcoming shows November 8th, this weekend, I will be at IrishFest Atlanta with my daughter Inara. November 14th through 16th, we'll be at CONjuration in Duluth. November 22nd, Georgia Renaissance Festival Fall Fling. November 6th, Georgia Renaissance Festival Fall Fling. And December 7th, I will be at Nerdy Wonderland at the Lost Druid Brewery in Avondale Estates. I hope you'll come join me for one of these shows. Let's play some music. Next up is Dublin Gulch with a track I found over on the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. This is Sarah Daly and the Copper King's Daughter from Tapperlight.
Jack Stronacado, it's down into the mine. O'Brien was a Cavan man, McGee from County Clare, and never in the Union breathed such a motley pair. They worked deep in the never sweat, dug copper for their pay, ate hard rock dust for dinner, and scorned the light of day, scorned the light of day. Now there lived a fair young maiden at the bottom of the mine. Her name was Sarah Daly, and the boys thought her just fine. Her eyes were of the darkest brown, with lashes long and fair. Her legs were strong and slender, and chestnut was her hair, chestnut was her hair. Jack Stronacado, it's down into the mine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. O'Brien wooed the sweet young lass with tasty sugar lumps. McGee would often pass her by and pinch her on the rump. The miners sure were smitten with this beautiful Colleen, and tied silk ribbons in her hair, red, yellow, blue, and green, green, red, yellow, blue, and green. One day there was a fire 900 feet below. Get out the foreman shouted, and up the men did go. There were but two that stayed behind amidst timbers and debris. We've got to get our Sarah out, cried O'Brien and McGee. McGee cried O'Brien and McGee. Jack Stronacado, it's down into the mine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. At the bottom of the head frame, the miners scrambled free. They hollered out but found no sign of O'Brien and McGee. Through smoke so thick and sooty, they searched the crowd in vain. They're lost, the foreman cried. We'll not see them again, we'll not see them again. Now the fellas all concluded, sure as the sun above, McGee and Paddy O'Brien were victims of their love. But when the dust had settled, stood a pair of Irish fools, O'Brien and McGee, with arms wrapped round a ribboned mule, round a ribboned mule. Jack Stronacado, it's down into the mine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. And it's Jack Stronacado, down into the mine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine. Once more for Sarah Daly, where the sun don't ever shine.
Please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at pubsong.com or wherever you listen. Email pictures of what you're listening to follow at kiltfather.net. I'll send you a free gift and you can learn about how to follow this podcast. So some news that I want to share with you. First off is the Celtic Christmas Music Podcast releases the first official episode of the season, or I guess by the time this comes out, it should be officially out. So go start listening if you enjoy some Celtic Christmas music. If you don't want to listen right now, go subscribe. That way you don't miss a single episode and you have lots of music lined up for the holiday season. It is free to listen to, although I do also have a Patreon page exclusively for Celtic Christmas music. And the show does rely on your generosity. So if you want to support that podcast over there, go check it out. We are looking for volunteers to work the Nerdy Wonderland table and also to promote the event. A big thanks to my gun runners on Patreon. If you enjoy this podcast or you love listening to my music, please follow my Kilt Father Patreon page. You can sign up for free and get updates on what's new, and you can get ad-free editions of this podcast before public listeners. But get so much more when you become a patron of the arts. Patreon is one of the ways modern musicians and podcasters make a living. For just $5 per month, you'll get exclusive unreleased songs, podcasts, video concerts, bootleg concerts, and much more. Email follow@kiltfather.net to get more details. I plan to release a new song every month on Patreon, so this is the way to get on top of the new music. Today's show is brought to you by Celtic Invasion Vacations. Every year I take a small group of Celtic music lovers to relaxing adventure of a lifetime. We don't see everything. Instead, we stay in one area. We get to know the region through its culture, history, and legends. You can join me with an auditory and visual adventure through podcasts, blogs, videos, and photos. Sign up to the mailing list at celticinvasion.com. In 2017, I led a Celtic invasion of Brittany, and you can read about our search for the Holy Grail in France. In the meantime, it's time for the quest and chorus of the alignments of Carnac. Over 3,000 standing stones stretch in careful lines through the fields of Carnac. No one knows exactly why they're there. Were they a celestial map? Some say they mark burial grounds, but walking by them, I didn't feel like I was in a graveyard. I felt like I was among the elders. It reminded me of Fangorn Forest, home of the Ents. In The Lord of the Rings, Fangorn is a place where time moves slowly. Trees remember battles that men have forgotten. Carnac is a lot like that. The stones are not dead, they're just waiting. I can't help but wonder who placed them there, so careful and deliberate. The stones of Carnac weren't raised by elves or Ents, but by real people. Neolithic builders, thousands of years before, written history. Here's what we know about them. The alignments of Carnac in Brittany, France are one of the most remarkable prehistoric monuments in Europe. They consist of long rows of standing stones, menhirs, and other megalithic features that stretch across the landscape. Archaeological studies show that many of the stones date back from 4800 to 3500 BC. Some recent research suggests parts were erected as early as 4600 BC. The site is not a single line, but a complex of alignments. 4 groups, for example, Menec, Kermario, Kerlaskin, Petit Menec, that lie in the commune of Carnac and its surroundings. Originally, these stones were erected by Neolithic people who lived in what we now call Brittany. Their purpose remains a subject of debate. Some propose they were ritual or ceremonial. Others suggest funerary meaning, or perhaps linked to astronomical patterns or seasonal calendars. Over the millennia, many stones were removed, toppled, or used in local buildings, especially in historic times. The word alignments refers to the visible row of standing stones that still remain. Over 3,000 of them. This isn't just a Stonehenge thing with, a couple dozen stones. These are 3,000 of them lined up. It just blows my mind. Today, the alignments of Carnac are protected as important heritage sites. Research continues to refine their dating and function, and the monuments remain a remarkable testimony to the ambition and organization of prehistoric communities. Now, there are some actual legends connected to the Carnac stones. One of the most widely told involves Saint Cornelie, According to Breton tradition, Corneille was being pursued by soldiers. He and his oxen fled, and the stones of Carnac are said to be the soldiers turned to stone as a result of divine intervention. While these legends don't claim to explain the actual Neolithic origins of the stones, they illustrate how later generations understood and imagined the dramatic row of stones in their landscape. And really quick, if you want to find out more about the Carnac stones, I do include some reference links in the show notes, so make sure you check those out. This is for show number 610. It was quite fantastic walking around the alignments in Carnac. We couldn't walk actually through them because it was a protected archaeological site, but it was just these stones were just massive. They're like monuments that lasted thousands of years, built, or rather raised to last. It does make me think of my song Heart of Fangorn that I recorded with the Brobdingnagian Bards. I wrote it as a sort of sing-along for the Ents of Fangorn Forest from Lord of the Rings. Now, if you're not familiar with them, these are the talking trees in Fangorn. The song sort of speaks for the trees, much like the Lorax, but it speaks for the trees, for the roots, for the voices we ignore in our haste to make money or just to lord over the land. The Ents stand watch over the woods, much like the Menhirs stand silent on the moor, but they watch as we hasten along toward our mutual destruction, if you will. And it doesn't have to be that way, because we have power to make change happen. Step one is, of course, recognizing that our actions, our individual actions, are important, much like making the most of your own food, not wasting food. That's something that we can do, a small little thing. Yes, it's not going to change the world just by that, just you doing that. But it's a starting point. It's a starting point, like I said, that can take a while. It can take years for us to change our behavior. And when we start with ourselves, then we can find a community that's also willing to make change happen. And once you have a small community that's willing to do that, it can inspire and encourage a larger community. Eventually, those fossil fuel companies that are also causing enormous damage to our civilization and our planet, they will be forced to make change. But it requires one step at a time. You as an individual, us as a community. Then we hit our cities and states and country and world, and then we have real change that actually happens. It is not a quick process, so please don't think you have to make change overnight. But together we can make change, and I hope you will join me in making change happen for the good of our planet. Here is Heart of Fangorn by the Brobdingnagian Bards. It's from our album Memories of Middle-earth.
In the heart of Fangorn
I hope you enjoyed the song. If you want to hear it live, there is a bootleg concert that we did back on 2024 on our podcast. You can go check that out. There's a link in the show notes. There's also a recording of it that we did. We were just ranting and rambling on the podcast right before our 2008 Brobdingnagian Bards tour of Ireland. So that's another way to listen to this song. There's also They Come in Pints album pen. I need to get that up into the store. I'll see if I can do that before the holidays so you can send one to your family and friends. As I think about it, I might be able to make an album pen that's all about serving our planet, which I like that idea. You'll also find the lyrics in the show notes, so go check those out. Now, your final clue is in the chorus of the song. One word that echoes like a heartbeat. Listen again, it's the word the forest sings. Not the echo, but the word. Can you figure out what that is? You'll find it in the show notes, because the stones are not silent, they're just slow to speak. This is the final episode named Quest and Chorus. For that matter, it's also the final episode of Folk Songs and Stories, at least by those names. I ran a poll on Patreon to see what name people like the most. The most popular name was Pub Songs and Stories, so we're moving back to that name, starting with probably next week. So whenever this goes out, it'll be about a week later. I'll change it to Pub Songs and Stories. Okay, stay tuned for that. That said, Quest and Chorus is not gone forever. This is just the beginning. I really like this special feature. And so in some future episodes, I'm going to have a section of the podcast that will include a Quest and Chorus for you. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, and make sure you go to celtfather.net/quest to unlock your secret reward. I realize that the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast, my award-winning flagship program, is a great show, but over the past decade, the podcast has become more and more dominated by instrumental Celtic music, which is fantastic. I love a great set of tunes as much as the next person, but I feel like the singers and the songwriters have lost out a bit. I started playing music because I wanted to be a songwriter, and of course I am a singer, so I love all styles of music. I love learning how to write songs. Writing Celtic and folk songs are one of the reasons I continue to create music. So another section of the podcast that will come in the future is something that's going to promote the singers and songs and songwriters that I find on the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast or wherever. Now, of course, I've already been doing that on the podcast, at least highlighting them, but I'm hoping I might be able to get an interview, a story, or whatnot, which there are options, so stay tuned for that. A great example is the interview that I am sharing next time on the podcast. I interviewed Mikey Mason about his songwriting techniques and the things that inspired him to write a new song and share it each and every week for several years now. I'm trying to write more songs myself, and I will continue to share them over on Patreon. And hopefully every month I might have a song that I can post here as well. If you want to check out some additional references, there is a secret history of the Celts revealed. There's a history of Celtic Brittany. There's Celtic Carnac concert that I put out. Lots of great stuff for you to check out over on episode number 310 of Pub Songs and Stories, and I hope you will explore those many links over there. And thank you so much for listening. I will be back in a couple weeks. Sláinte. Thanks for listening to Pub Songs and Stories. This episode was edited by Marc Gunn and Mitchell Peterson. You can find a link to the show on my Patreon or wherever you find podcasts. Sign up to my mailing list to learn more about songs featured in this podcast and discover where I'm performing. Clean energy isn't just good for the planet, it's good for your wallet. Solar and wind are now the cheapest power sources in history, but too many politicians would rather protect billionaires than help working families save on their bills. Real change starts when we stop allowing the ultra-rich to write our energy policy and run our government. Let's choose affordable, renewable power. Clean energy means lower costs, more freedom, and a planet that can actually breathe. Join the quest and sing along at pubsong.com.